Hi there, guys. Well, thanks so much for joining me today to have a chat about your brilliant series, Not Looking. And I was lucky enough to be at your premiere in New York recently. And I just wondered what it meant to each of you to finally share it with family, friends, peers, with the wider world, and what that kind of really warm reaction to it meant to you. Jonathan, do you want to go first?
Yeah, it was really special and really emotional for me. I mean, I cried at the end of it because I was so overwhelmed with gratitude for everyone showing up and for how much it actually affected the people that were there watching. Having an audience next to me and hearing their responses really showed me how necessary this story is and how much people connect to these characters and how important it is to see yourself reflected, on a screen. And it just really moved me. And I was just so grateful for that experience.
And Ahmed and Delius, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I for me the most special moment, I had my mom and my sister there, and my mom has seen me on Broadway, on television, in high school plays, and she's always just like, "Okay, good." Like, but after the premiere, we were in the Uber back, and she drunk looked at me and was like, "Delius, that was amazing." And I after that. I haven't called any of my friends to ask their opinion. I didn't. I don't care what anybody else thinks. My mom told me that it was amazing, and to just do something so queer, to do something so vulnerable, in front of families, specifically coming from the South, where you kind of hide everything, and for her to say that that was amazing, and it just warmed my heart. I was like, oh, this is I'm complete now.
Yeah.
And for me, I think just coming out, what the circumstances that this was born out of and the collective experience that we all shared, not just the three of us, but everybody who came to see it, getting to share it and reflecting on what that experience was like for us and what the world was like, it heightened the meaning of this piece because it was something that was born out of really incredible circumstances. So to be able to finally encapsulate that in an evening and to have us all collectively almost kind of exercise a lot of these past 2 years was just so overwhelming and so beautiful. And like I said, that evening, getting to relive a lot of the experiences that motivated this story and to do so publicly with so many people who support us and know what those experiences were like and to dramatize them, it just felt greater than the sum of its parts.
So yeah, tell me a little bit more about how you came together as a trio, because you're all co-writers and obviously star in Not Looking, and Dalius, you're the director. But yeah, how did you come together as a trio, and how did Not Looking come about? Whoever would like to jump in with that first.
I'll
Elliot,
go.
you
I'll
want
go
to,
because
yeah,
I'm
take that.
a bit of the connective tissue. So Jonathan and I, the abridged version is I was going to go to Ithaca. That's where he went for his undergraduate. And so I went and toured, and we met long time ago. I'm not even going to talk years. But we met a while ago, when I was in high school and he was in college. And we just kept in touch. And then when I moved to New York, we reconnected, after college. And then college happened, and then New York careers happened. And I met Ahmad 2018. Was it
Yeah, the
2018?
very end of no 2019, very end of 2019.
Yes, December 2019, when we were doing, we got a show at the Public called The Visitor about first generation, or immigrants actually. We're both first generation, and so we met during that show. Then the pandemic happened, and we then decided to take a trip together. Because we were doing nothing for the beginning half of the pandemic. So we took a trip to P-Town, and I think because of the direct reaction to the Black Lives Matter movement and George Floyd, it seemed to me that white people were really overcorrecting or trying to overcompensate. So like they were just being really, really nice and really flowery with their language to the point that we felt like we were like an exhibit everywhere we went. And so I was like, we have to write this just because so many, for lack of a better word, weird, annoying, frustrating things, funny, kept happening to us because we were this unit that was going around P-Town. And so that vacation was like July. I kept saying, we need to write this, we need to write this. And I think they were like, okay, yeah, we do. And I just decided to like get on my computer. I didn't even have Final Draft. I had Celtics at that point, like a free subscription to Celtics. And I like wrote 10 pages. That wasn't that great. It was called like The Good Negro, and I presented it to them and they were like, okay, the idea is there, let's flesh it out. And that's when I then met, because I was in Houston at the time, I met a cinematographer that was like, oh, I like the idea, I'll shoot it for you. So we then we were like, we need to make a writer's room. We started.
Scott Worrell is his name.
Yes, Scott Worrell was our producer and cinematographer and ended up being an additional editor as well. But we then started making a writer's room. We started reading Save the Cat. We started watching all the master classes online to really see how we could tell the story in the best way. And so this was, we intended it to be a web series, but then we started, because we had all the Broadway community willing to work with us, it kind of got bigger than we initially thought. We got the cinematographer, but initially our idea was a web series, about 7 episodes that were 7 to 10 minutes. And then we screened at the public, and now we're here talking to you.
And then you guys would like to add to that, the sort of the origin story.
Yeah, I think it was just that experience in P-Town. Not only was it one that was, it dealt with a lot of microaggressions and, things that were a result of what happened that summer with George Floyd and the awakening of the racial trauma of the United States. But it also was a lot of fun and crazy things that happened and like wild, unexpected circumstances. So we were like, our lives are so dynamic and so diverse. They like the experience of being a gay man of color comes with so many different nuances, and that we thought that those things would make an interesting story and were something that really we've never seen before, on TV officially. There are a lot of web series, like we said, that have been attempting to tell queer stories about men of color, but in a large scale, that really hasn't happened. There's only a select few series that have existed that center gay men of color and that don't only deal with the sexual aspect of being gay. So we wanted to add to that element to like show that we actually are multifaceted and nuanced, and there's so much more to our experience than just that. Yes, that's a part of it, but there's so much more that goes with it.
Also, as performers in 2020, we were all affected by the implosion of an industry that is still recovering. And so it wasn't like we could just transition our work to a work from home situation like so many other industries were. And so when Delius came to us with this script, we all recognized this opportunity to take back a lot of the creation of our work. And we had an opportunity with all of this time and no real avenues to continue to perpetuate our careers to take back some of that agency and to start making something based on our own experiences and revitalize a lot of what keeps us in this business too. And that was also, the circumstances were just so right. The three of us meeting, the three of us having this great time, the three of us going through all of these collective challenging experiences, and the motivation to actually make something because we didn't get to for so long, and we're still struggling with that.
Yeah, and I actually only met Ahmed when we went on that trip. I did not know him prior to that. So Delius really was the glue to bring us together and we had an amazing time, and here we are today.
And tell me a little bit about each of your characters and maybe where we find them in their lives when it first opens, because they're all in a very kind of, they're all in interesting situations that kind of immediately draw us in, I think, as viewers. Ahmed, do you want to maybe start by telling us about Sharif?
Yeah. So Sharif is the first person you see in the show, and we each of the characters draw from our own individual experiences that are then dramatized and expanded. And so Sharif is this guy who is continues to be in this crisis of identity, and particularly racial identity, and deflects that through his sexual appeal and sexual prowess and sexual desire, and doesn't really know how to reconcile that interest with the kind of identity and the kind of person that he's growing into, and the opportunity within the dynamic of this friend group and this pact that they make to discover that, and then the conversations they have challenge him to start having to address those qualities of himself. And so he's used to sitting back and kind of taking a lot of those microaggressions that he faces in stride and not really examining them. And that's his own personal challenge in the course of this story.
Yeah. Jonathan, do you want to go next? Tell us about Brandon. Yeah.
Yes. So I play Brandon Clark, and Brandon comes from this upper middle class family in Baltimore, Maryland, in which, you know, his parents are very successful, and they have instilled in him, you know, these qualities of doing right, doing good, being successful. And I think all of that has come into him to manifest in him of a way of wanting to live this perfect life. So he finds himself in a long-term relationship with his partner, Nate, who on the outside, everyone thinks is a perfect couple and it's a beautiful relationship, and they're both very handsome and successful. And Brandon is an interior designer, very successful in his career, and he has the perfect apartment, and they live together with Nate. But actually, the relationship is not good underneath it all. So he covers and masks the traumas in his life with this veil of perfection because he doesn't want anyone to see, you know, the real hurt inside of him. But that all comes to a head when he discovers that his partner was cheating on him, and it ends their relationship. So now he's at a place where he's actually able to find who he is and what his happiness and joy is, devoid of a relationship, devoid of this perfect idea of what it means to be, you know, a gay Black man in America. And so he goes on a journey of finding love of self and how can he have joy on his own, truly, and not be attached to what it means to have a man in the perfect life.
Yeah. And that's what the whole sort of pact idea kind of at the beginning is you know, for all the characters, isn't it, in a way to, like, you know, just find themselves maybe without romantic relationships. Yeah, and Delius, tell us a bit about Olu. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, I think the best way to talk about it are all these characters really. Our log line is three newly single best friends make a pact to stay out of relationships for a year. That's just our simple log line of how all these characters are connected. But during that time, I was at home when I was writing, and I hadn't been home. I'm from Houston, Texas. I hadn't been home really for that long since I left since high school. And so I had, in the pandemic, afforded so much time to think critically about my own actions, to think about everything that I had done, everything that I hadn't done. And I just, living in New York, because I just moved out to Los Angeles, I never had that much time to just think critically about myself, and to really work on loving myself consistently, and to actually deal with the big traumas and the little traumas that I faced as a kid. So Olu for me is a person that is before that journey. He in attempt to keep love and find love, he molds himself to other things, and drugs are one of them, and partying are one of them, or you know, we talk about colorism in the film, which is really, really, I was felt proud to speak about loudly, but also it's something very vulnerable for me, because in Texas, it's all about skin color, you know, the lighter, the better, really. And so he's a person that in his journey of loving himself, he hasn't gotten to the part where he's like, no, like, I'm not going to let all these outside factors and traumas really affect who I am. And so where we want to go with these characters is we really want to have those conversations about how do we love ourselves, devoid from a relationship. But yeah, Olu just he's crazy. He crazy, he fun. He's from Houston like me. He's first generation like me.
Nigerian.
He's first generation Nigerian American. Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, and as you said, Delius, about where you want to go with these characters, because obviously, like I say, I've seen the first. It's about an hour, isn't it, that you've created so far? But really, this is just a taste, just a flavor of these characters and where you could go with Not Looking. So, what really are your hopes for the future with the series? Where would you like to go from here?
We did all of this with a $20,000 budget, like from pre-production to production to post-production. You know, ideally, we want each episode to be 30 minutes. So we shot about 7 episodes that were like 7 to 10 minutes. And so if we did a whole season with 10 episodes in a season at 30 minutes, we want to just expand so we could really talk about each of these things. I would say each chapter has a theme to it. Like our chapter 5, when we go to the beach, it's like fish out of water. And then chapter 6, that's when we start dealing with racial identity and colorism and those traumas, when we have when we're going that fish out of water thing and we're getting those comments from those white people, like, they're so hot for Black guys. Episode, I think it's 3, is when we talk about the DL men. Like, we're both Sharif and Olu are dating guys that aren't really out. And then episode 2 is, you know, we're deciding that we're going to choose to love ourselves, but then we still are getting swayed by these other men, and how do we really be disciplined? So I think each episode would have those themes that we can really expand upon for a full 30 minutes. Or, you know, if somebody would like to give us, you know, an hour development deal, we'll take that too. But yeah, we want to, you know, a television show. Was really the goal.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead, Jonathan.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, yeah, to that end, I mean, so in order to make that happen, we're looking for production companies to partner with that will take this series to networks and studios and pitch it behind us, so that we then get that development deal to make the full length series that we want it to be.
And as far as content goes, in terms of how we want to expand that, you know, so much of what we get presented as far as examining the kinds of stories that we're trying to tell are either represented as a monolith or represented in silos. And so we don't often hear a lot of the nuanced conversations that men like us have with each other, not just outside of our community. And so there is so much detail and complexity to our own experiences that we only get to touch upon in the hour-long piece that we've already created. And particularly coming out of this global conversation, we want audiences to dive in with us into the intricacies and the complexities of what these men go through individually and as a friend group, and how they interact with society. And so that's just, particularly this intersection of race and sexuality, there's just such a dearth of material there. And the conversations that we do get about that are often really thin or superficial, or can be pandering. And we just, again, coming out of our own experiences, see an opportunity to really dive into that.
And one thing I just really love is just the friendship at the center of it, these 3 friends. Sorry, Delius, you were going to say something. Yeah.
Well, yeah, just to kind of dovetail off of what Ahmad was saying, I think it was really, really important for me for us as the co-writers and creators, but for me as a director also, was to have those nuanced conversations. I think that it could have been really easy to just pander to the others and say, like, look at us, like, look what happens to us, we're so angry, like, we're so traumatized, but that's not in life. Black people of color are so much more resilient than just like crying all the time about the traumas. Like, we are conditioned to keep pushing, and so I think it was really important for us to show how it affects us on a personal level, how it affects our relationship. And that's why in our big climax, when we were writing it, we were like, well, we could go back and forth with the the others, if you will, we're going to call them, but and that's why we had that little flash forward, or this fantasy moment. We're like, okay, we could make this a fight and argument about us, but it's really not. It's the conversation really is like, how does in a nuanced level, how does it really affect us? And those things, it's like, yeah, I hear comments like this all the time, every day, about or about color of skin, and about I call it, like, the hierarchy of gays, but how it really affects it is sometimes we are, it does create infighting, it does can play polarization, and those kind of really nuanced things are what we want to talk about. So it's not just pandering, like, oh, poor us, or like heavy-handed writing of like, oh God, look, everything, our life is so bad, because life is really fun. Like, like, it has its little traumas, it has its big traumas, but I don't know, I feel like we really, really want to try to create a nuanced conversation.
Yes. And just say, it is a lot of fun. The show is really fun and very funny, and sexy, as well as having something to say as well. But was the sort of comedy aspect always kind of in there from when you first started writing, along with the emotional depth? One of my favorite lines is when Sharif says to his brother, like, it's New York, everyone makes a scene. It's like, so it's great lines like that. But yeah, so was the comedy sort of always part of it, as part of the balance of everything else that you were trying to say?
Well, I'll say that the comedy exists in our own lives. So we weren't even really necessarily working hard to make it funny. It's just that, like, I had that conversation, and that was the reaction that I got from my attitude about that conversation. And that was how I authentically responded. So the circumstances of difficulty and challenge that we face themselves are also really funny sometimes when you look at it from a bird's eye view. So we wanted to just be authentic to our own experiences, and they happen to be really funny sometimes.
I like the music a lot, and yeah, what was your how did the soundtrack come together?
Yeah, well, the three of us have really heavy histories in musical theater. We've all been in Broadway shows and musicals, and so we have a training in musical theater. So we're really attached to music, and we understand the importance of musical storytelling and how that can really enhance a story. So we really looked to find songs that not just were cool songs and sounded nice, but that actually helped advance the plot, really, of the stories, and really further open up the heart of what the characters were feeling, what they were going through, and transition from one character to the next character, bridges between how each character was feeling. And we also, because we're so intent on telling queer stories and elevating queer voices, we try to find as many queer artists as possible as well to use on the soundtrack, because we want to amplify their voices as well. So that was a huge thing in creating the soundtrack, which we are so proud of and which we're so grateful to all those artists. So we created playlists on Apple Music and Spotify. Check them out, Not Looking playlists, and you can listen to these amazing artists yourself. And you can kind of, even in listening to those soundtracks, you can hear the story of the series, because truly those songs mirror the journeys of the characters.
Yeah. And you mentioned the budget, Delius, and I know you shot over just like, you know, two and a half weeks or something like that. And I find that really impressive because to me it looks really expensive. I think you managed to achieve that. And
Rich.
did you have anything in particular in mind for like the look of the show? And Jonathan, I know you did the costume design, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe talk a little about the look and the costumes too.
I think, and we use Cine lenses just because we want. I think it's funny because we wrote a TV show, but then the way I feel like we wrote the arc of the story like a film, you know. And I know that I wanted to use Cine lenses just because I feel like they pick up all that beautiful nuance of color and depth. And so I do know once we get real money, I want red cameras. Like I want it to be shot like a film. I think that's what's so beautiful about shows like Insecure, and I May Destroy You, is that, you know, it does have that quick pace, but we are really getting as much nuance and character as possible from the lighting, from the costuming, from the lenses. Yeah, because I also just think that people of color look really good with good lighting and good cameras, you know, like, and so I wanted to make sure that, you know, we looked really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of the costuming, it's talking about looking good. Yeah, we were very deliberate about how we dressed each character. I mean, all the supporting characters as well, but I mean, just talking about the three central characters with Olu, you know, we had a discussions about his spirit and how he's so fun and he's full of life and, you know, his Nigerian heritage. So he's a very colorful character. So we wanted to highlight that through what he's wearing, lots of color and lots of fun, and play with patterns, and, you know, had a lot of fun with him in that way. And then with Sharif, you know, he's a Arab American, so we wanted to dive into he's very spiritual and, you know, in tune with nature and nurture and flowy, and he's also kind of trying to find himself. So his fabrics are like flowing and kind of not as structured because he's not as settled in himself, and he's finding, you know, who he is. So there's flow within him, and beautiful patterns, and, you know, something that's very grounded in him. And then Brandon is very structured and very, you know, he has tailored outfits, and blacks and whites are his color because he's just very chic and clean, and he goes from these darker colors when he's in his more depressed states, and then he kind of tries to find some light, and he goes into whites, you know, at that time, but then there's a blend of the two when he's kind of trying to figure it out. And so yeah, it was very, very fun to style everyone and costume everyone, and I think that really added to the storytelling to see, you know, the distinction of the style of each character too, so you could really just look at them and understand what type of person they are.
Yeah. And a great Speedo moment as well with
Yes, we did have a lovely Speedo moment on the beach. It was freezing cold that day, mind you. I have to tell you, it was one of the coldest days ever, and we were in Speedos on the beach, and we were running between takes, like, to stay warm, and doing push-ups to try to stay warm. And then we're just like, okay, chill when they say action. So hopefully we didn't look like we were freezing, but we were.
And that was the last day. We had one reshoot day, but that was the last that we shot in the Hamptons, even though, you know, we called it P-Town. But that was right. That was the last 2 days of shooting. And so we were at that point. I mean, why we were so skinny is because we had slept or eaten for about 2 weeks. But I just remember like waking up because I mean, as you know, we had so many hats that we really could never sleep. But I remember that night before, just like waking up, I'm like, okay, you need to wear a white Speedo and I need to wear yellow, and then somebody needs to be in cobalt blue. Like it really, like, it was so fun. As tired and exhausted and hungry as we were, it was so fun to have ownership of our work, of our story. I feel like it reflected on set. Like, we were like so nourished of like, oh, it's so cold. Like, people are gonna hate us for making them be on this beach and it's cold. But everyone was like shivering, like, no, it's fine. It's fine. We can whatever you need. Like, we're happy to be here. We're happy to shoot with you. And it was really, I keep saying that these are like some of my most magical days, just because it really, that as hard as that beach day was, I just remember, like, once it was over, I was like, I cannot believe we did this. I can't believe these people showed up for us like this in Speedos. Like, it was just really, 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 really amazing.
Yeah, such a great sequence. Yeah, you never know it was cold. You never know it was cold. You guys well. So in the last few minutes, I'd love to get from each of you your favorite piece of LGBTQ plus culture. So it could be a film, a TV series, a book, a play, artwork, or a person who identifies as LGBTQ plus. So just something or someone that's had an impact on you and resonated with you over the years, and why. Ahmad, would you be ready if I go to you first?
Gosh. I'm gonna give a standard response and just say Paris is burning.
Oh, take it.
Did I steal yours?
That's fine.
I just find it to be such a seminal launch pad for our culture in a way, particularly men of color and particularly Black men. What that piece has generated for our culture for the decades to come. I mean, I think almost everything goes back to Paris is Burning at some point. So that's my touch point. Sorry to steal that, Delius.
Okay, I'm going to go second just because I don't want Jonathan to steal mine. I'm going to say Noah's Ark. It just was, as a kid, I was astounded to see gay men that were Black in a scripted series. It had multiple seasons, and then it had a movie. They were so fine. They are so fine. And I always say, like, they were for me, that they were just like top. I was like, I would love to one day to be able to do something like that and to be seen in that way.
Yeah, they were the blueprint. Patrick Ian Polk, we speak your name. Thank you, sir. So yes, I agree with both of those things, and I would have said either of them, but I'm gonna say actually Terrell Alvin McCraney, and it might be something. I don't want to toot my own horn, but I have worked with him in the Broadway production of Choir Boy that he wrote, and I just think that he really is pushing the narrative forward about what it means to be a Black gay man in America in a really nuanced way, not only theatrically, but also on camera with his series, David Makes Man. I mean, he just speaks to our generation in such a true, honest way. And I can't speak enough to the beauty of his language and storytelling and creativity and nuance. So I think that he brings another element to queer storytelling that is just so necessary and vital.
The Oscar.
And he's an Academy Award winner of Moonlight. Let's not forget. Oh yeah, so it's not only Broadway, Choir Boy. We've got TV, David Makes Man. We've got film, Moonlight. I mean, yeah. What more could you ask for? He's covered all the bases, and it's fantastic.
Well, Ahmad, Jonathan, and Delius, thanks so much. Congratulations on what you've achieved so far with Not Looking, but we need to see more. We need to see more of these characters and more of the series. So thanks so much.
Thank you.